Okay, welcome to the regular meeting of Council for Monday, March 12th, 7 p.m. in City Hall Council Chambers. I'd like to call the meeting to order and have the agenda approved. First, I'd like to recognize that we're doing our business this evening on the unceded traditional territory of the Hupechesit and Sechot First Nations. Councillors, any late items? City Clerk, any late items?
Mr. Mayor, there are no late items.
Okay, then a motion to approve the agenda as circulated would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And just so that public understands, I lost the bet with the Mayor Stu Young of Langford, and unfortunately our boys didn't win the series. But I have to tell you that we're really proud of them. They worked incredibly hard. And some of them through injuries, and they were still there. The team, the team staff, and particularly our councillor Ron Paulson here, been with that team every step of the way this season, and so I'm not happy that I lost the bet, but I'm happy that our team has worked so well, and I'm quite happy to wear this this jersey. I view it not as having really lost the bet, but I captured their jersey by having done this. So,
Stand up or show everybody.
You want to see it? Okay. The jersey, the Grizzlies jersey, and you know, I was at our Game 6 here, and we had almost 1,400 people at Game 6. Game 7 would have been pushing it to have 500 in Victoria. So, yes, it was a beautiful sunny afternoon, but still, we have great fans in Port Alberni, and of that I'm really proud. So, we're the envy of much of the rest of the island in terms of the local support for our Bulldogs. So, enough of that. Council, we have minutes from the regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on February 26th. A motion to adopt those minutes, please.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And this brings us to public input period, and I believe we have a little bit of input. And we have Mike Carter and Teresa Ludvigson have a special little presentation. Teresa, yeah, you might want to.
You're a duo.
Thank you, Mayor Rattan and Council, for having us here this evening. On behalf of West Coast General Hospital Foundation and our Board of Directors and those we serve, we would like to offer this token of our appreciation for the work that the City Council and Mayor do for our city. And what we have here today is local artist Michael Cleary's picture, Coming Home.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I snap a picture?
Well, let's hold it this way. So,
Mr. Mayor, you have to keep the jersey for a picture.
He lost the bet.
I lost the bet, so.
Yeah, get out of the picture.
Photobomb.
Photoshop. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you. We do have some really good places in City Hall for this to go. And we've had been discussing it a bit. So
Excellent.
I can guarantee it's not going to go in the CAO's office.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to our next item, which is from the Government Finance Officers Association. I'm very pleased to once again announce that the City of Port Alberni has received the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting for its annual financial report for the year end December 31st, 2016. And a Canadian Award for Financial Reporting is presented by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada to municipalities whose annual financial reports achieve It is the wrong one. It's on my desk. That's a different award that I'm giving. You know, that's what happens when you're a grandfather, right? Okay, this award. Thank you, sir. The Canadian Award for Financial Reporting is presented by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada to municipalities whose annual financial reports achieve the highest program standards for Canadian government accounting and financial reporting. The city has received this award every single year for the past 24 years. Many thanks to Kathy Rothwell and the entire finance department team for their continued commitment to achieving the highest possible standards. So I'd like to call Director Rothwell forward so I can present this to her in person. This is so much lighter.
Get a picture?
Okay, Council, that brings us to unfinished business. The Chief Administrative Officer has a response to questions from February 21st meeting. We have a report dated February 28th from Mr. Ply providing a response to a letter submitted from Roland Smith at the February 26th regular council meeting. CEO Ply, do you need to go into any of those?
Mr. Mayor, I'll try not to read the report. I would like to summarize it somewhat. We've had some questions asked about the relationship between the city and McClay Mill Society, in particular around the appointment of directors. So the background of the report indicates that in December of 2016, McClay Mill Society was established for the purposes of operating McClay Mill National Historic Site, which is owned by the city. And it was incorporated, the society was incorporated under newly revised regulations that enabled us to have a society with only one member. And the city, the corporation of the city of Port Alberni is that member. And some of the questions are about, so I pulled some of the questions out of Mr. Smith's letter. I'll read you 1 and 2 to start. They pretty much summarize things. Question 1, further to a response provided at a February 27th, 2017 meeting of council, what is the procedure for replacing McClay Mill Society directors in the event that a vacancy occurs between annual general meetings? And the response is that the report, February 27th, 2017, which is attached from the city clerk, outlined the single member nature of the McClay Mill Society. Part 4 of the McClay Mill Society, it should read bylaws, set out that the society must have no more than 7 directors and no fewer than 3. Therefore, in the event that 1 or more director positions become vacant between annual general meetings, that director position may either be left vacant until the next AGM or filled midterm at the discretion of the membership, which is the city. In fact, that happened in February 2017 when the city, as a member, approved the appointment of 2 new directors to fill vacancies on the board. There is a provision in the McClay Mill Society bylaws, section 4.2, that make reference to the board of directors appointing a member to fill a director vacancy. However, that can't happen because there's only one member of the MMS, and that's the city. So even though it allows for that, that can't happen currently because there's only one member. At some point in the future, if there are more members, if council or the city decides to have more members, that might be enabled. The second question, which is worth reviewing, what is the role of city council and councillors in terms of McClay Mill Society membership? So I think there's some confusion that council might be the member of the society, when in fact it's the corporation of the city that is the member of the society. And as the head of the city, council, you act collectively for that one member. And to be clear, individual members of council are not McClay Mill Society members, nor is council as a whole the member of the society. It's the corporation that is the member, and city council exercises that member, the city's authority, as the McClay Mill Society member. One question that I'm going to scroll to near the bottom of the report. One thing that does come up is if you go to further discussion at the bottom, is the whole conversation around the city acting as a member of McLean Mill Society. And because council is the head of that the organization of the city, and council has not delegated that authority, then council as a group needs to act as the member of McLean Mill Society, unless you choose to delegate that authority. So as it stands now, at annual general meetings of the McLean Mill Society, council will be required to assemble and convene a meeting of council at the same time as the McLean Mill, at the same time and within the McLean Mill Society AGM, which is doable but maybe cumbersome. And council would then vote for anything that gets referred to the membership of MMS. Council would vote as that collective member. An alternative is that council could delegate that authority to a member of staff, and that member of staff might be the city clerk. Would be a good position to have that delegated to. A council consider that, and in that case, council could give direction to that staff member, the city clerk, and the city clerk could attend McLean Mill Society AGMs and act on behalf of the member. So that's something council might want to consider taking into action at some point. So my recommendations, Mr. Mayor, are that the report be received and that a copy be sent to Mr. Smith, and that council give further direction, if you like, on the appointment of a city staff member to act as a member.
Okay, so council, I'd like to suggest that first we have a motion to receive the report with the copy sent to Mr. Smith, and then the second, frankly, I think I'd like to suggest that we consider holding off a decision for a couple of weeks on this until our next council meeting, just to give us a little bit more time to consider how we want to respond to that. You may feel differently. I'm just making that as a suggestion. So, Councillor Minions, do you want to move receipt of the report?
Move receipt of the report.
Is there a seconder? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. So I'd like to suggest we need a motion on the other, whether we want to make a decision now or we want to put it off for 2 weeks.
I'll make the motion to hold it off for the next council meeting, regular council meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Council. Council, that brings us to the next item. From the Director of Development Services, a nuisance property, 3183 3rd Avenue. We have a report from Mr. Smith requesting Council declare that building located at 3118 3rd Avenue, lots 8, 9, Block 73, District Lot 1, Alberni District Plan VIP 197, PID 003-830-535, a nuisance property. And you recall we put this off for 2 weeks just to make sure that we had given the appropriate notice. Councillor Sobey?
Thank you. First, I'd like to that the report from the Director of Development Services dated March 6, 2018 be received. Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Second motion, that the Council for the City of Port Alberni declare the property located at 3118 3rd Avenue, Lot 8-9, Block 73, District Lot Number 1, Alberni District Plan VIP 197, PID number 003-830-535, a nuisance property.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
We do have Mr. Brown, I believe, in the audience, and perhaps Mr. Brown would like to address council on this. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
I'm waiting for my partner. He's the one who's going to be talking tonight, and he's coming from Victoria. He's not here yet. He should be here shortly. I'm just wondering if we could stand this down for a little while. I don't mind holding off for a little bit.
We can go on to the next item of bylaw enforcement before we vote on that, and before we discuss it, but I'm not willing to hold up the entire meeting, waiting for your partner to show up.
Okay, I'm hoping he'll be here. I just texted him to see when he was going to get here.
Does he drive and text?
Yeah, he said he'd be late, but
Okay,
he's not the fastest driver. in the world.
we'll hold it off for one item.
Okay, thank you.
And here he is. So we don't need to hold it off. Mr. Chambers, just so that you're aware, please come forward. Randy's volunteered your services.
Thank you.
We've made the motion, but haven't voted on it at this point. So I'm not sure if you have something you wish to say about the consideration for 3118 3rd Avenue being declared a nuisance property or not.
I have quite a bit to say.
All right.
And photos are better than words. There's your building, as of 20 minutes ago. And it bears a striking resemblance
Thank you.
to the 2009 photo Mr. Hausinger provided you, which he said was the base on which the decay and deterioration had occurred. It's identical. So the work has been done under difficult conditions, and it's been done very rapidly. There's a full set of photos of each of the individual items, which Mr. Hausinger sent, saying it showed problems. There's about 15 of them. And there are matching photos taken today, earlier, parallel to each one of those photos, saying that the problem is gone. There were no fire doors, 36-inch steel, in Port Alberni on Sunday.
There were no what, sorry?
36-inch fire doors, which had been ordered.
Okay.
We went to Nanaimo to get them. I had a major legal meeting in Victoria today at 1 o'clock. I went to that site at 7 o'clock this morning, give it up everybody to complete all the work, and I say all the work that was ordered, and they did it. I drove to Victoria, came back here, typed up a somewhat acidic email saying that we'd complied with everything, and sent all the photos in the Dropbox to the relevant parties. I'm pretty concerned about what's been going on, because there has been constant attacks under very difficult conditions. We have done an amazing job on this building. Look at it. You've seen the previous photos of the really serious deterioration? You must have, because it's in the record. Could we get a...
If I could, do you have any pictures from inside, sir?
Yeah, that would be great. The Google ones.
Is he asking me, or?
Which were then compared with the appalling state, admittedly appalling state, of the exterior of the building and the interior. Everything interior in this building is done now. You can't get keyed locks by just taking them off the shelf. You have to, you know. So there were delays there were delays in other places, but look at the work that's been done.
Again, I'm going to ask, do you have any pictures from inside the building, sir?
There are pictures that in the attached Dropbox that was sent here before 7 o'clock, which will show that we did all the doors and we did everything else that was required inside the building. There's nothing not done. If we can find the 2009 photo, please.
I'm not sure, Mr. Ply?
Mr. Chambers, who did you send those photos to?
It was sent by Mr. Hautzinger saying, I Googled your building, 2009.
Okay.
This is what it looked like.
We don't have access to those here.
And I give you a photograph herewith showing that there is serious decay and deterioration in the building. This photo is identical to the one that was taken in 2009. Every single thing that was complained about is done.
Okay.
And it's been done fast, under not easy conditions. I don't do this for a living. I came up here because I represent a half owner in the building, and it was clear to me that there were problems, and the city was legitimately concerned about those problems. And you don't cure those problems simply by improving the exterior and putting all the fire doors in and improving the interior. There isn't much to improving the interior. I went through the building today, and considering the fact that you're not exactly renting to West Vancouver socialites in the building, the interior condition is reasonable. I think it's acceptable, but you can't go into the apartment, so I can't determine it. All I can determine is that we found the necessary doors. We've taken out the 34-inch doors, which were illegal, and tenants put in. We didn't put them in because they put 2x4s to ensure that it was properly bolted in so nobody could break in the door, is what I understand. But we, took whatever those special saws are, and we cut it all out, and we put in the correct doors and frames, steel. Yes, sir.
Councillor Sylvie?
Yeah, I'm sorry if you don't mind me asking questions while you're...
I'm happy to have you ask questions. Maybe I can give you some.
Yeah, have you, as per your landlord, have you given notice to any of your occupants, a 24-hour notice upon inspection inside their dwelling?
They've had
apartments?
10-day notices, they've had 2-day notices, and when they ignored them completely.
Okay, I'm talking about a notice for you to go inspect inside the units.
Had them posted on the doors. And this morning, or yesterday afternoon actually, when a tenant said he would not allow the door to be replaced, I went around there. And this morning, he was quite happy to allow it to be replaced.
Okay.
We don't have tenants who are necessarily cooperative in terms of the landlord and the authorities in various forms, including the city and the police. This building has a particular occupancy. And with respect, if you want that occupancy scattered over the city, you'll get it.
Well, it has nothing to do with having it over the city. It has to do with the landlord's responsibility to provide a safe and healthy environment to live there.
You can't control what the tenants do. And there is a safe and responsible and healthy environment at that building. Look at your photograph. Inside, it's the same thing.
Okay, so you're telling me by looking at a photograph, I could see that it's health?
Well,
It's
if you've
safe
got the
and
old
healthy to
photograph,
live there?
which I don't have here, it shows that there were no balconies. It shows mold everywhere. It shows windows smashed out. It shows doors with no catches on them. All the doors have catches. The balcony was built in the lower balcony, which is frankly somewhat of a work of art, was built in 24 hours. That's a lot of work. And it's perfect. It's properly drilled, it's properly set with screws, and we think it's a vast improvement.
That's all the questions.
It definitely looks like a vast improvement, sir. The report that we're looking at says in 2017, the RCMP received 95 calls for service. There have been 15 calls for service to the property from January to March 5th of 2018. The number of calls this building receives is extremely high, and emergency calls would not be considered a nuisance.
Who's speaking to me?
Sorry?
The mayor's.
I
Oh,
Figured out either.
okay. The mayor is speaking.
I'm the mayor. Yes.
I know you're the mayor, sir. I recognize that completely.
Okay.
I just didn't know where the voice was coming from.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. Yeah, and you're going to find that your calls are going to go to zero. But I can't, that's for the future. Anything could happen. May not comply on that. All I can comply with, and comply with alacrity and with good workmanship, I took a crew off building the Athol apartments, which they were very unhappy about, because I couldn't get access on short notice to competent craftsmen to go and work in Harborview. So I just told them they had to come down, and they came down. As to what's going to happen about calls, I'm not here. I like Port Alberni. I've been fishing in Port Alberni for probably 60 years, on and off, and I intend to come back and fish a lot more, which is one of the reasons I'm interested in coming here again. I work all over the place normally. But Mr. Brown can tell you how he's going to cut the calls and what gave rise to them. I don't do that kind of stuff. Randy, please stand up, tell them the call problem and how you're going to rectify it.
We're going to be a lot more heavy-handed, and we already have. I was charged with assault the other day, and if I have to get charged again, I will. And that's what's going to happen. That's what Tim Ply wanted me to do, and that's what's going to happen. 10 months ago, I had a meeting with Tim and Scott, and at that time he said he was happy with all the people that were in Harborview because the city had them all in one spot, and they could keep an eye on them. And now something went awry at some point, and now you're saying that you want to spread all these people around the town?
Randy, it's a simple question. How are you going to reduce the calls?
Anyways.
How are you the manager? Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
You're the manager.
Yeah.
I'm not a manager. I'm simply somebody who was called in to try and deal with it.
So we're either going to be a lot tougher with them, or we're going to have to get rid of them. One of the problems I see with this nuisance thing, since day one, I've asked Scott Smith through text and emails that I'd like to see copies of every single police report on every call. And not until, I never ever got a response from Scott on that, to my text or to my emails. But I did get a response the other day from, I believe, it was a building inspector. And he said, because of privacy concerns, they can't tell us who's calling. So we don't have a clue if it's somebody up on 201 that's a problem, or somebody down in 106, or what apartment is actually causing a nuisance, if there is a nuisance, and causing the calls. We don't get that information. So it's impossible for us to say, hey, Jeff, in 201, we've had like 46 calls on you last year, you're out. We can't do that. So the only other option would be to kick everybody out and say, you're all a nuisance, we're kicking you all out, and put 30 people on the street. And that's the problem that you're getting into, because you can't give us that information about who is actually the nuisance. We don't know who the nuisance is.
Well,
We don't know if it's Jeff, or we don't know if it's Jenny, or we don't know if it's who.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The nuisance bylaw is about the building and the state of the building itself and its compliance with code, with fire. It has nothing to do with the owner, or sorry, with the tenants of that building or what they may be doing in that building. This is about the building itself and what that building represents as far as our reputation as a city and what we expect in terms of standards in our city for our buildings. So to put that onto the tenants and to say that it's all their fault for some reason, I'm sorry, that's not, I don't think that's city business, that's tenant and residential tenancy branch business. This is about the building and the building's code and your ability to maintain this building to standard. And that's why I think we're here trying to get a hold of that standard and apply it so that it actually applies in our city equally, and that our residents can actually be proud of the city that we are living in.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé, and then
Best, I think, if I respond to that, because I can. That building will be maintained in code. Its exterior, its interior, is a physical structure and in compliance with everything from the fire regulations on down the line. I have crews that work here, and we will allocate personnel to ensure that the building stays in the state it's in now. We think it's completely in conformity. If it's not, we'll be advised. But every single thing that was in the last list I got, except for another summary on a smelly deer carcass that was left there allegedly, every single thing to do with the building we've done, and we will continue to do. And the number of calls may or may not be a function of the tenants, or it may be a function of bad management. I started this off by saying I can't comment as to what we'll be able to do with regard to the tenants, but I can assure this council that this building, as long as I'm involved, and I intend to stay involved, will be in complete compliance with code, and will be a building that looks as good as it looked the day it was completely redone in 2009.
thank you. Councillor Sauvé, and then Councillor Paulson.
No, I was just going to thank you both for coming and giving us an updated information. I was ready to go on the motion that's already been read, but if Councillor Paulson has something else he wants to say, go ahead.
Well, just once again, I think it's time to move on with the motion. But you know, in the staff report, under the discussion lines, the last statement is the nuisance activity should be reviewed by council after a year to evaluate whether the designation needs to continue or if it can be removed. And I'm prepared to move forward with the nuisance designation based on the number of calls in 2017, both by the fire department and the RCMP. There's 96 calls in 2017, and that's just that day call. For me, that translates into about 180 man days, including doing reports and follow-up reports. And I think that the building site, the landlord, the ownership, all have the ability within the next year, I think, to prove that we can remove the designation if it's warranted. But at this point in time, based on past history, I think we've been left with no alternative.
Councillor Minions? Oh, Councillor Washington, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to our CAO. If we declare it a nuisance and if everything's done that Mr. Chambers and Mr. Brown has said, they virtually have nothing to worry about, do they? Will be monitoring the situation.
Mr. Mayor, so if the building is designated a nuisance, then from that point forward, any frivolous, if you like, or unwarranted responses by City Resources, the cost for that could be put back on the owner. So if the building has been brought up to, if the deficiencies have been addressed, and it certainly looks like a lot of work has been done there, and I commend the owners for the work they've done on the building, that should take off the table repeat inspections from building and fire and bylaw. What we're left with is the management of the building, and council's pointed out 95 police calls on a similar pace this year to last year, likewise with fire. There's no indication in my mind that the management corner has been turned there. If the building is designated as a nuisance, and going forward, if there are not a continuation of the call volume there, then there won't be costs assigned to the owners. But if the building continues to be a draw on municipal resources, then we will have no choice but to put those costs on the owners. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a similar question as to Councillor Washington, that essentially if the issues have been addressed, then it being a nuisance property should have no impact, I would hope, on you. I know that I was really surprised and impressed actually when I came to our council meeting today, because you could see a visual difference in the building for sure. I think that though, as a council, we need to make sure that that pressure remains on, and hopefully the building has taken a turn, and the improvements will continue to be there, and the way that the building is managed will we'll see an improvement in that as well. So I'm in support of declaring it a nuisance property still, but I'm certainly really pleased with the work that's been done so far.
Anything else, Council? On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried. And Mr. Brown, you obviously have done a remarkable job. You and Mr. Chambers have done a remarkable job in a short period of time. For that, you're to be congratulated. And let's hope you maintain the same level of management that you've done with the reconstruction. And in 1 year's time, we review it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, that brings bylaw enforcement policy. This was my motion, so I'll just give a little bit of background. And that is, we're just about to begin the process of establishing a bylaw department. And so I believe that it's appropriate for us now as council to direct staff, to ask staff to come forward with, for our consideration, a bylaw enforcement compliance and enforcement policy, because we don't actually have that in our bylaws, but we do, we now have a need for it. So there are models elsewhere, and good models actually. So it's worthwhile looking at that, and just to give a bit of direction to staff. So I'll make that motion, that Council for the City of Port Alberni directs staff to bring forward a bylaw enforcement, compliance, and enforcement policy.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. And from the Director of Development Services, response to questions, we have a report dated March the 7th providing response to questions at the February 26th, 2018 council meeting regarding residential use of commercial buildings. It's a fairly complete report, and it's, answers each question really completely. I don't know if council needs a review of that, or if you're okay with that. And if that's the case, Councillor Sobe, do you want to make that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the report dated March 7, 2018 from the Director of Development Services providing information regarding residential use in commercial areas be received.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, that brings us to staff reports. The first one is on accounts. Councillor Washington, do you want to make that motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated March 12, 2018 be received, and the checks numbered 140863 to 141161 inclusive, and payments of account totaling $360,940.50 be approved.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? Carried. And City Clerk, the Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society. It's an update renewal on a lease for property. One of the best deals in town. Councillor Alberni, do you want to move that motion?
That Council for the City of Port Alberni authorized the Mayor and Clerk to enter into a lease with Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society for Part 1 in Plan 5330 Wallace Street for a 20-year term commencing March 1st, 2018 for the purpose of a parking lot at the current yearly rent of $1 plus GST.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And we have minutes from the Audit Committee. Councillor Paulson, do you want to move that motion, please?
That the minutes of the February 26, 2018 Audit Committee, the responses to questions arising from that meeting dated March the 6th, 2018, the quarterly analysis of mayor and council travel and convention expenses ending December 31st, 2017, the financial statements ending December 31st, 2017, and the vendor check register report ending February 15th, 2018 be received.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And council, we have a report from the city clerk on 2018 election procedures. You very rarely get to stand there, so.
It feels very different. If you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to kind of walk through the report. I think it's probably important for everyone here and important for, for the public watching as well. I'm sure everybody is aware by now that we do have an election this year on October the 20th. There are a number of things that that council needs to consider in regards to our election bylaw, and regardless of whether council endorses any of the recommendations in this report or not, I will be bringing back the bylaw, regardless, because of changes that were made to the Local Government Act. Requires some housekeeping amendments because all the section numbers have changed anyways. But there are a few things that I'd just like to bring to your attention and have you consider in regards to the bylaw. So the first one is an alternative to the provincial voters list. There is an alternative, which would be voting day registration or same-day registration. We have typically used the provincial voters list for determining our eligible voters. The alternative, of course, is the same-day registration. There's advantages, there's disadvantages to each, and I'll quickly walk you through those. The provincial voters list is a lot of work to prepare. We get the list from the province. We have to physically sever a number of addresses from our list. There's a lot of work to do to make it our final list that we bring forward to the election. One of the things to note for this year as well, it's going to be a year and a half out of date when we get it. So, which is another disadvantage, is that it's often not up to date, and we have people that come to the voting place. They say they've registered before, they get frustrated because their name's not on the list, and not understanding that it's not us that have prepared it. It does take some time to process changes, so when we have a list and somebody says, oh, my address has changed, my name has changed, we have to use all the provincial forms, to make those changes. We advertise advance registration, there's costs to that. Also, the costs associated with printing the list of electors. It's 12,500 people on our voters list. It's a lot of printing. The advantages on the other side, registered electors who are on the list, there's no changes. They don't have to provide their 2 pieces of ID when they come to the voting place. Their name's there, we process them. Candidates are able to have a list of the provincial list as well. And it can be relatively efficient to process people if they're on the list and there's no changes. So with voting day registration, all the work and costs associated with preparing the provincial list are eliminated. People would bring their 2 pieces of ID, we process them right there and then. We don't have to pay for advertising advance registration. We don't have to copy and produce the provincial voters list, and it would make for easier training of our election officials. Disadvantage of that, there's no provincial list for candidates to use. Some people may show up at the voting place without their 2 pieces of ID, so could potentially get a little bit frustrated. And it may take more time to process electors because everybody then has to prove who they are and their residency. So that's some of the disadvantages and advantages of each of those. I would really like to recommend that we go to voting day registration. I do think that it's going to be a lot easier for training our election officials and for processing people and for eliminating a lot of the work that we have to do ahead of time. So that would be one of my recommendations to council. And I can go through the whole report and we can consider each one at the end if you'd like to do it that way. Well,
you've made 4 recommendations, so let's get to the why you've made the 4 recommendations. So that's one of them. So
that's one of them. Yeah.
So you're 25% of the way there.
Okay. All right. So moving on. minimum number of nominators and deposits. So as it stands right now, candidates must be nominated by at least 2 qualified nominators of the municipality. And that's the number that we have in our bylaw as well. The Local Government Act does allow local governments to set the minimum number of qualified nominators based on a community our size at either 10 or at 25. The Local Government Act can also require that nominations for mayor and council should be accompanied by a nomination deposit at no greater than $100. I don't recommend that we consider deposits, but considering the interest that we've had in our local government elections over the last couple of elections, 2011, 2014. 2014 we had 22 candidates for council and 7 candidates for mayor. I do recommend that we increase our nominators to 10. I think it's relatively easy for someone to get 2 nominators on their papers and file them. If someone has to get 10 people to nominate them, then it certainly shows a level of seriousness when they file their papers. So my recommendation on that one would be that we include in our election bylaw a minimum number of nominators of 10. Mail ballot voting. Council asked after the 2014 local government election that we provide a report in regards to mail ballot voting. And I've looked into this on and off for some time, and I've talked to a lot of municipalities about this. A lot of municipalities certainly do it. There are still some that don't. Those that don't are very happy that they don't. Those that do have commented on just how much work it really is to do that. It's quite an onerous set of procedures. They certainly have their place in larger municipalities or in regional districts where people may have difficulty in getting to a voting place just because some regional districts are so huge, it's not easy. So mail ballot voting is certainly more user-friendly for some of those people. Typically, it's been used by snowbirds in the past who go south for the winter, and those people tend to leave around the end of October. Quite honestly, I don't think we've had ever more than a handful of people who've asked us about mail ballot voting or saying, how can I vote because I'm not going to be here. And this year, of course, the election is a month early. It's October 20th. Our first advance vote is October 10th, which is right on the heels of Thanksgiving weekend. I think people typically tend to be with their families over Thanksgiving. And I think that we're going to capture a lot of the people that would previously have been south. I think they're still going to be here. We also provide special voting for people who are in our care homes and at the hospital, so we can capture, some of those residents who can't get to the voting place. And also for people with physical disabilities or illness or injury, we do provide curbside voting as well. So there are many opportunities, I think, for people to vote. And simply implementing the procedures for mail ballot voting, I just think is going to be a challenge. So my recommendation is that we take a wait-and-see approach for this year with the date change and not implement that for this year. And the last one, it's not specific to our election bylaw, but election signs is certainly an issue that was a bit of a challenge during the last election simply with the amount of candidates that we did have. And we have been fairly lenient in recent years with the placement of election signs. And this year I actually recommend that we actually enforce the bylaw that we have, which is very clear in restricting signs on public property completely. So if we enforce that, it doesn't preclude any signs going up on private property, but it would restrict them completely from public property. So my recommendation is that we simply enforce the bylaw that we have, and like I say, candidates can place on private property. The Ministry of Transportation also allows them on highways, as long as they're placed safely, but they do sort of generally allow them to be placed. So for instance, Johnson Road is a highway, River Road is a highway. So we have no jurisdiction over those areas, regardless. So that would be my recommendation on that one, Mr. Mayor, is that we just prohibit, that we don't make any changes, that we just actually enforce our own bylaw.
Okay. City Clerk, thank you very much for all your work. It was a lot of thinking to get to this point, a lot of time. Questions, Council? Councillor Paulson?
Just one quick question. It has to do with same-day registration and the ID thing. And I know you can't cover everybody, but there are segments of our population that don't have two pieces of ID. And is there any proof or way of allowing them to participate as well without the two pieces? Like, some people don't have a driver. They might have a medical card, but they don't have a driver's license. They don't have a passport, and so on and so forth. But
There is a declaration of residency that can be signed.
Okay.
So we are prepared for those individuals when they come and they just don't have that ID that is required. We try to make everybody, able to vote. If they're eligible to vote, we try and make that happen for them, and there is a residency declaration that can be signed.
Great, thank you.
But that would be the case in any year, wouldn't it? Or any voting year?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else, Council? Councillor Alberni?
Yeah, I had the same kind of issue around the same-day registration, but as long as they were able to vote and declare, then that's fine. The only other question I had was around the election signs. I fully support actually enforcing our own bylaws. That's always a good idea. But to that point, it would be, and I've seen this done in other jurisdictions, it would be interesting maybe if we designated one spot in the community. The one that comes to mind for me is the place there on Roger where we always have the banners and stuff. If we said, okay, that one spot is a place where any candidate could put their sign on public property, then
That's actually private property.
Is that private property?
It belongs
we'll
to
just take it
Catalyst.
over and then do that.
Yeah.
That whole thing is private property?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, never mind then.
Yeah.
But if there,
Just
if
make sure you
there
get to
is
the
a
right
public
side of the
spot
street.
that we could designate as one place for all of the community to be able to see and be able to access, then signage can be one of those things that is really limiting between one candidate and another, just from a cost perspective. So if there was one place where they could put it, and we knew that all of candidates had that opportunity, then that would be a good, fair place to do it.
A rogues gallery.
Yeah.
Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Alberni is saying. I think one spot, because signage is a really good reminder that there's an election coming up as well. So although there would be signs on private property, sometimes having that, compilation of just a ridiculous amount of signs is a really good reminder to people. So, and some people, if they're not reading the paper, it might remind them to research the candidates or at least see who is running. So maybe if we chose one public space, maybe somewhere where people aren't driving while they have to try to figure out who's running for the election, might be an idea. But I think very limiting is a good idea. But I don't know about totally enforcing our bylaw.
We learned from the last election a lesson.
Yes.
A big lesson.
Okay. So, Councillor Minions, would you like to move receipt of the report from the City Clerk?
Move receipt of this report.
I'll second that.
All in favor? And you're on a roll. Councillor Minions, would you like to move those recommendations, or would you like to move them one at a time, or would you like to move them as a complete package?
Probably one at a time, Mr. Mayor, would be better, because they're quite different.
All right.
I move that we go to voting day registration as authorized in Section 69 of the Local Government Act.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Okay, keep going.
I move that Council's election procedure bylaw set the minimum number of nominations at 10 in accordance with Section 86 of the Local Government Act.
Is there a seconder?
I'll
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
Do we need to move to not do mail-in ballot?
No, you can just leave it alone.
You're going to leave that one alone?
Unless somebody would like to move that we do it.
It's not in our bylaw right now, Mr. Mayor, so by not taking any action means that we
Okay, so we
wouldn't do it.
don't even do it, okay? And
City clerk always listening to listen to.
and then And actually, the last one, we don't actually need to move that one either because it's already there.
I would move that council designate one public space for election signage.
Second.
And who would be the lucky person to pick that public space? Because
And the size of the
The city
signs.
clerks.
I think the city clerk would be the reasonable person. Chief electoral officer.
we have some public spaces that are, in the middle of the bush somewhere, so that could be one that she chooses. Councillor Sobey.
Personally, I would like just to respect the bylaw we have in place and have no signs in the public places. Because if you're going to designate one area, you're just going to have arguments over, who's going to have the bigger sign and cover somebody else's sign and so forth. So, no, I'm just telling you. It won't stop anybody to put a huge sign and cover the other sign. It's just going to cause argument.
And
I would vote to just keep it the way it is.
I would actually support you, Councillor Sobey, because private property is along the railway as well, because that's not city property. So in front of Stamp Avenue there, that is not city property along the railway. The railway along Johnson Road, Latham Road, that's private property. The highway up and down Johnson along River Road. There's lots of seemingly public space that does not directly belong to the city. And if you really wanted to put it in an alley somewhere that does belong to the city, well, probably nobody's going to rip your sign out. So I wouldn't want to put our city clerk in that position. I would just assume we stick to the bylaw that we have. Councillor Washington.
I too agree with Councillor Sauvé. We'll just adhere to our bylaw and make it a level playing field for everyone.
Councillor Alamani?
I just got to say, if we adhere to the bylaw, it's not a level playing field. That's right. That's the point, is if we have a one designated space, and we can put, some sort of limitation on the size so that it's all equal, it doesn't all, and nothing's going to be bigger or smaller or whatever, then it's equal. But if it's just kind of hither, then we don't necessarily know what's going to be, or people won't be able to necessarily have it the same opportunity. That's all.
Okay, on the motion then, all those in favor of the city clerk designating one public space as a place for signs? Opposed? Motion defeated.
Very ironic, Dennis.
I did it for him.
Okay, let's move on. Council, also from the city clerk, Johnson Road North End boundary extension. We have a report dated March 7th from city clerk advising the next steps in the boundary extension process. Councillor Alamani, would you like to make that motion?
I will once I find it here. Hold on.
Number 5.
That the report from the city clerk dated March 7, 2018 be received, and council for the city of Port Alberni direct staff to proceed with the alternate approval process to obtain the approval of the electors to include Lot A, DDEP 41630, District Lot 152, Alberni's District Plan 7451, except part in Plan VIP 52692, and Lot A, District Lot 152, Alberni District Plan VIP 57061, 3376 and 3386 Johnson Road within the city's boundaries, with a deadline for receipt of elector response forms indicating opposition to the proposed boundary extension of 4:30 on Monday, April 30th, 2018.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And we have from the McLean's Mill Society, the monthly report. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong sheet. City Clerk, we have Food Security and Climate Disruption Committee recommendations. Page 105. We have that report. There are a number of recommendations. First one that we need to do is to receive the report. So, Councillor Alamani.
That the report from the city clerk dated March 8th, 2018 be received.
Is there a seconder? All in favor? Carried. And then we have some, a series of recommendations, council, and probably better to do them one at a time. Councillor Alberni?
So these came forward or coming back from Food Security Climate Disruption Committee. We brought these recommendations back specifically because they were sort of the low-hanging fruit. There wasn't much that that the committee could do as far as further work before it being considered by council, or it's stuff that that is very sort of it's there. It's a package that's ready and it can be adopted or not adopted by council. So so there's 5 in there. So I'll leave it open to council how they want to deal with that.
Okay, Councillor Alberni, I'd like you, if you could, pass on for me to the committee. They've done an amazing job with these, taking the 10 recommendations that were previously there and bringing them down to 5. And 4 of the 5 are really easy to understand for me. There's just one that I just need some clarification on, but I like the way they're put together. I like the thought that's gone into them. So my suggestion is that you make them each one at a time, and then if council has questions, we can they can be asked at that time.
Okay. So we'll do the first one here. That council for the City of Port Alberni direct the Parks and Recreation Department to include programming to promote and educate, that should say educate, on backyard composting.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Discussion, council? All those in favor? Carried.
That council for the City of Port Alberni tasked the Food Security and Climate Disruption Committee to investigate how the City of Port Alberni could join other municipalities and levels of government in current or future class action lawsuit against fossil fuel multinationals to recover costs associated with mitigating and adapting to the effects of climate change.
Is there a seconder? I'll second it. Councillor Alberni?
I'll just speak to it a little bit just to emphasize the point that this isn't a motion to actually participate in any of this action. It's simply a motion to allow the Food Security Climate Disruption Committee to basically create a report for council to see what's out there, what's happening, and whether it's something that council should consider or should not consider. So it's basically just giving the Climate Disruption Committee some work to do to see if this is something that's worth looking at. Other communities have already kind of gone down this road, but we're not suggesting that at this time.
To me, that's a very elegant way to do this. So that was one of the things that impressed me about it. But that's just me. Any other questions, council? So it's moved, seconded. Councillor Paulson, you ready to vote?
Well, no, I appreciate your clarification on this. This is the one that really had me kind of mind-boggled a bit. And I just want to make sure that we don't get dragged into some kind of social disobedience as a municipality. But if it's reporting back to us on that basis, yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. Councillor Sauvé?
Yeah, I just wish, I respect that, but I just wish I could see that in the wording of the motion.
It's there. It says to investigate how the city could join other municipalities and levels of government in current and report back.
Okay.
So to me, it's pretty clear. Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Third one, that council for the City of Port Alberni directs staff to expand the oil to heat pump incentive to include those participating in the new Alberni Clayoquot Regional District wood stove to heat pump incentive.
Is there a seconder?
Second that.
Just out of curiosity, there hasn't been a lot of uptake from the regional district perspective. Are you anticipate any more from do you think there will be any more from the city, or?
Well, this wood stove to heat pump is brand new. It's from the province, so this is the first year that they've done that. So we're not sure, how that's going to work out. Hopefully, it's successful. For our oil to heat pump program, I think we had one last year. take advantage of it. Part of the reason I think it'd be good to expand it to have the wood stove as well is because it'll give us that ability to promote both a little better and maybe get some more uptake. So this is just, again, this is taking what we already have, which is our oil to heat pump incentive, and just allowing people who might be taking advantage of that wood stove, the new wood stove to heat pump incentive from the province, and allowing them to take our incentive as well. So that basically almost doubles their money. So $900 rather than $400.
Okay.
Mr.
On the
Mayor? If I could
CAO.
If I could clarify, does that apply only to city residents, or does it apply to residents outside of the city, but in the regional district?
The intent would be that it would be whoever had applied to the oil to heat pump. So I would assume the oil to heat pump was only for city residents. So I would assume this would only be for city residents as well.
That's what I would have perceived. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried.
And the council for the City of Port Alberni directs staff to send a letter to community stakeholders of support in principle for efforts to form a centralized food distribution network within the community.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Okay. Councillor Alberni, could you give me an example of where such a letter would go? Or to whom such a letter would go?
Yeah, for sure. So this has actually changed quite significantly since our report. And the reason why is we had a really good presentation from one of the directors at the Bread of Life talking about what is already happening as far as their investigations for food, kind of a food distribution network. And what food distribution looks like in the community right now with all of the different stakeholders. So people would be, the people that this would be directed to would be people like the Bread of Life, like the Salvation Army. Alberni Valley Transition Towns is doing a lot of research on this. So there are a number of groups that are trying to do the food distribution network a little better. There's an acknowledgement that there's a ton of food out there. There's a ton of food that's being distributed. It's just maybe not being distributed as efficiently as it could be. And the example that's being touted is in Nanaimo with Loaves and Fishes, which is very much kind of centralized their distribution so that all stakeholders in the community and the public can go to one location and pick and choose what they need rather than having to go to each stakeholder group, having to go to every grocery store or shop or whatever. So it's been very successful there. The original suggestion was that the city take a kind of a leadership role, but upon further review, there's already a lot of work that's being done. So the committee thought it would be appropriate just for the city to show support for that that initiative that's being taken, and then hopefully in the future that kind of network will be able to come to fruition.
Okay. Any further question on the motion then? All those in favor? Carried. And last one.
So this is the bigger one, and the reason why it has come back is because it is a fully flushed out package from the ACRD, which the report that it's based on is attached to the agenda tonight. It's called Water for Growth, and it was received by the ACRD in January. So this is based on that recommendation. Basically, what the report did was it looked at how can the community, how can the ACRD encourage more food production in the valley and in the whole region through some sort of water incentive program, and what those water incentive programs might look like. The Agricultural Committee did a lot of work on that and came up with this report. And what it produced was a package that each water district in the ACRD could potentially use as incentives within each community. All of the package didn't have to be taken on. It could be done in bits and pieces, but for the most part, it's there as a ready-made, as much as it could possibly be, solution for the city. So the recommendation is for the city to take on 3 different things: residential rainwater harvesting rebate program, a residential food garden watering billing credit, and a $1 per year water rate for a community garden. And now I realized I said all that, but I didn't actually make the motion. So I should probably make the motion.
All right.
That council for the city of Port Alberni directs staff to report back to council on implementing the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Water for Growth recommendations to create a residential rainwater harvesting rebate program, 2 per year for $750, residential food garden watering, $50 billing credit, 10 per year, and $1 per year water rate community garden policy.
Second.
So just to clarify, are you suggesting that there only be 2 that would be eligible for the $750 residential and only 10 for the $50 billing credit?
Correct.
And then community garden policy, $1 for water for forever?
Any community garden forever, which is basically what we're already doing for the YPAV one down on 4th Avenue.
So the, I guess my concern personally with the residential food water, does this mean that we would be sending city staff around to verify that those 10 gardens exist and they're actually producing, or what would be the metrics there?
There is in the package, in the Water for Growth package, there's an application form in there. The intent of that would be that there would be a committee that would look over those applications on a year-to-year basis. The obvious committee for the city would be the Food Security Climate Disruption Committee, so the committee could do that work. But that's how the ACRD has proposed it, is to have the applications be done year by year.
So then the committee would go and say, yes, you've got an appropriate garden and it's working well enough, so therefore we're going to recommend that you get the $50 billing credit. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's meant for, it's not meant for, tiny gardens or for flower gardens or something like that. It's meant for residents that are creating, a kind of a market garden thing where they're potentially going to be providing not only their own food, but food for the community, whether it's by selling or whatever, and covering a small portion of their overage that water would require for their garden.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
I guess I'm a little confused because the ACRD, Water for Growth, it looks like they've adopted this, and the city is part of the ACRD. Would we not just fall under their program and leave it at that?
That's kind of how it's been set up, but it was set up so that it came to the ACRD, and then it was up to it, as always works in the ACRD. The ACRD's member regions always have a choice whether to do one thing or another thing with whatever comes up to the ACRD. So we're potentially making that choice of whether we want to take this on.
Councillor Sobey.
No, just like what Councillor Paulson was saying, because we are members on the board, and I'm sure we've voted for it because they have it, so I'm just wondering if this is just a duplication or
Well, it
just
isn't
an official endorsement from council.
It isn't from the residential food garden watering. The $50 billing credit would come from the city. It wouldn't come from the ACRD.
And all that was done at the ACRD was receive the report. As far as I know, no motions or anything were passed at the ACRD.
And I love the incentive of getting this out. It's two residences per year. Wish it was more, but to start sending those.
The committee would love for it to be more.
So pretty much a committee from, let's say, 100 people, they'll pick 2 people that they feel it's rewarded that
If the committee got 100 applications, I think the committee would be absolutely ecstatic, and the next thing that you would see would be a request from the committee to increase the number.
Therefore, increase the budget. Increase the success.
Increase the food.
And how's your garden growing there, Councillor Minions? All right. On the motion then. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Council. Moving on. Once again, Councillor Alberni, thank you for that report and all that work.
The committee thanks Council very much, I'm sure.
Now we're on to the McLean Mill Society monthly report. Sorry, Deanna, but it was important that we do that.
Thank you for having us again this evening. I am coming to you with great pleasure, finally, to announce that we are indeed running STEAM this year after a fairly extensive diligence process. Myself and our board and staff have come to the conclusion that we are now eligible to bring our STEAM assets back. So this is really, really pleasing for us, given the climate of cruise ships and moving forward with some of our tourism initiatives. However, I'm not going to talk too much because I think there might be some questions that you might have for me, so please.
Okay, Council, questions for Ms. Beaudoin? So
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. As I walk along the tracks, I can see fluorescent paint on some of the railway ties. So I'm presuming that means those are the ties that are going to be replaced?
Yes, so what we do at the beginning of each season, or what we're doing as now part of our best practice, is identifying our line is, it's under a process of a 10-year maintenance plan. So each year I'm having one of our regulators come through and mark all of the deficient ties or ones that would be questionable. And then we're bringing in outside maintenance to come in and change out roughly 400 to 500 this year, 400 to 500 every year for the next 7 years. So once that's done, the entire line will be in fantastic shape for a good 15, 20, 25 years. So by doing that, what you're going to see actually this year, because I said to do an extra, I wanted to know specifically how many exactly were left that we needed to do. So not all of those tiles will be changed out this year, but the ones that we're concentrating will be likely between Latham and Stamp. So we're looking at the higher density areas. And then there's a few other deficiencies that we've identified that need to be done as well. So this is just part of we're moving forward with a really proactive maintenance plan. We want to have this asset in our community for many, many years. So we're looking at things in that light instead of waiting for something to happen before we fix. So you'll see that next year it'll happen again. This is just our way of really monitoring the state of the rail.
And how about the ballast that the ties are
There's
on?
a few spots that need ballast, and we've got some people working on it. We're going to be doing some tamping this year as well. That was something that was left undone at the end of last year. And so we'll have to bring in some rock, and we've actually had some really great things happening in the world of picking up supplies. There's been a few suppliers that have come forward that are looking to donate or give us at a lesser cost. They're really pleased that this rail asset is coming back to life. So I'm starting to see a wider gamut of support, and this is really pleasing for our island. So.
And I'm really pleased to see that you are proposing, you are planning on replacing that roof on that really important building there.
Yes.
Do you anticipate any issues with that, or is it just be a contract and away you go?
Yeah, I'm meeting with Dr. Morton tomorrow and one of our city facilitators, and we're going to have a look and see who would be best suited. Because it is a historic asset, we have to follow a lineage that the museum will be guiding. But actually, that's a project that we're going to be embarking on right away, so we hope to have it done before our season even opens. So it's really important to us as well. I think personally, it's from the guest experience perspective, that is the favorite building. And we recognize that there had been some problems with that roof last year, this year with the storms and the heavy rains. It just is something that can't wait. We want to make sure we preserve the asset.
Okay, Councillor Sobey.
I just wanted to talk about for the powered RV sites. you're scheduled to getting 6 accomplished for this season. Is there any further plans? Because I know the RV sites are very popular.
We hope so. So my intention was a little conservative. I wanted to test out our model before we sunk a lot of infrastructure into it. I'm hoping that we'll be sold out this entire season, which will give us all the reason to add more power. We actually, on the site itself, we have no restriction that way. We have so much power out there. So this is just a cost basis analysis. We're just being conservative that way.
And for reservations, because I know they book a year in advance and so forth, are you taking reservations already, or are you being...
Our site actually, so we use an outside ticketing agent, the same ticketing agent that uses to book our train tickets. They are developing our booking system right now, and I'm hoping that's done within this next fortnight even. So once that's up, you'll be able to start reserving the campsites.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so online, and just come to our site for anyone who's looking for that information.
And the Easter Fool's Day pancake breakfast?
Still on.
How does one get tickets for those?
One comes on out, and we're going to have that posted on our website as well. And once this is not a train event. So right now, because we've decided to go down the steam route, there's some maintenance that needs to be done on number 7. And we're going to also be running the Alco, which is getting a paint job this year, which is really exciting to me. I like the aesthetics of all this rail stuff as well. So this is just a family-friendly, you can come out, check the website for ticketing, but it's very simple. Breakfast cafe is going to be open. There'll be a lot of family activities, Easter bunny, perhaps some hunting for children. So really, really casual, low-key, come on out. You don't have to be there at a certain time. Our site's coming back to life at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Paulson.
Deanna, maybe you could just maybe comment on the relationship between STEAM and cruise ships. And we know that there's 3 cruise ships coming in 2019, but I think you're looking at hosting cruise ship passengers before that time. And maybe you can just relate on the popularity of that attraction and the possibilities.
It's really important to us, this relationship. We had really felt the gravity of the decisions last year when we recognized that the tour industry coming out of Nanaimo, Victoria, they look at our asset, they look at the excursion coming through Cathedral Grove and then taking the train out, having the entire McLean Mill Historic Park experience as one of their highest rated West Coast experiences. So for us, that created a pressure for me, particularly as a developer. I wanted to make sure that we were able to bring that back to life. When you see that many people coming specifically, when they have quite a few options to choose from. So for us, it was really important to keep the relationship with the Nanaimo Port Authority very strong, and then with the tour operators bringing people over. So until we have our 2019 experience where the ships are actually coming to us, we still want to capitalize on the cruise market that's coming to Vancouver Island. So potentially right now, we know that there's for sure 3 coming into Nanaimo, but that could increase because sometimes there's added sailings. We will likely get 2 of those coming to our site this year. So 1 in the spring, 1 in the fall. Very cool for us too.
Councillor Alberni.
Thanks. Great work, as always. I just want to relate to the public as well that, in my role as liaison with the ICF, and so I'm connected a lot with the rail community up and down the island. They're really taking notice of what's happening in Port Alberni and the kind of the revitalization that's happening, and they're pretty excited about it, and it makes them hopeful for the rest of the island. So it's nice to have that work that you're doing and McLean Mill Society is doing. It's like a beacon of hope for a lot of people on the island, and I think you're going to see some people come up. Hopefully, and check it all out. A few kind of technical questions on the McLean Mill mill itself. What's its timeline for actually being in operation? It's not this year, but probably next year, hopefully, maybe.
No, we've sort of devised a strategic timeline for bringing our assets back to life. We are looking at things. We have to be really frank with the conversation around funding for this property. So right now we're looking at, I hate to say it like this, but low-hanging fruit. What are the things that are the most viable for our business model? So even bringing steam back, we're not going to be running steam every single weekend. It's not going to be an all-the-time steam show. It's not financially viable to do that. So we're going to build the packaging and the product out so we can have steam, absolutely, but we're going to make sure that we have the ridership and the polished product on the back end to make sure that's an entire package. So having said that, we're looking at polishing the front of house, if you would call it. So the guest experience. And once those pieces are done and we bring the assets of the park back into a really great place, so all the infrastructure and the maintenance is done, then we're going to look at how can we create an experience with that mill, because that mill is extremely, extremely expensive to run, and I do have numbers on it now. So we need to be able to either bring people to see it and to experience it that looks like we can offset some of the costs to run it. And then that's a conversation that will be had, and absolutely it's not one that we're putting to bed completely. Perhaps it looks like creating STEAM weekends or creating an initiative where people are coming out for a specific reason and then it's going. But that likely won't even, that conversation's not going to happen minimally next year. There's a lot of work to be done. This is a big, big project, McLean Mill. But as you can see already, there's potential here. There's a lot of people that are interested and invested, and it's worth the fight to go through these little pieces, piece by piece, putting it back together. So that mill conversation, I would expect to come back to you in a year from now, and then we'll talk about what next steps will be there.
That's great. The other just technical stuff is because there's more interest down the island, they're trying to look at, how did you do this and how did you make it all happen? So if I could just ask if you could pass along the information for, the engineer firms that you used, some of the costs associated with ties and the rail work and specifically, that'd be great, because I know there's lots of people out there that want to see what you've done and try to take advantage of it.
Replicating,
elsewhere.
fixing a rail line.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Washington, could you move receipt of that report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the monthly report, including operational plans for 2018 from the Executive Director of McLean Mill Society, be received.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, we have a status report. I believe it's been updated. Any questions, Council, on this report? Councillor Sobe?
Just want to look at number 9, reporting recommendations for the revision of sign bylaws with regard to the election signage. With the fact that what we put through today, do we still need to keep this on our status report?
Probably will be moving some of these off the status report now.
Okay.
So you won't see it on the next status report.
Okay.
But good point. Thank you. Any other question? Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt?
That the current status report be received.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And that brings us manager's monthly reports. We have one of them, Development Services Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to point out that building permits are strong again this year. And although it's not on my status report, I did want to let council know that we have received the official subdivision applications for the first phase of the old high school site. So we'll begin the processing of those, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions that council may have.
Good news.
Yep. Keep on just ticking away.
That's going to make Councillor Minion's road a lot busier.
She doesn't live there anymore.
I live past there.
You're used to that? Okay. Thank you. Any questions, Council? Then, Councillor Silver, do you want to move?
I'll move that the monthly report from the Director of Development Services providing information about current departmental operations be received.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And that brings us to our bylaws then. 5-year financial plan bylaw. We have the report for Council's review and consideration. Council, any questions? Councillor Washington, do you want to move that bylaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the report dated March 6, 2018 from the Director of Finance be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
That the 5-year financial plan bylaw 2018-2022 bylaw number 4960 be now introduced and read a first time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That the 5-year financial plan bylaw 2018-2022 bylaw number 4960 be read a second time.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That the 5-year financial plan bylaw 2018-2022 bylaw number 4960 be read a third time.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Back there, he's been so patient, just waiting for this one.
Okay. City Clerk, public hearing report. And he's absolutely delighted that he waited.
Mr. Mayor, public hearing was held in council chambers this evening at 5:30 p.m. with 8 members of the public in attendance. The applicant is applying to amend the zoning bylaw to facilitate the development of a 5-level residential apartment building at 3747 10th Avenue, which is the former Fairway Market, into, they would have commercial units on the ground floor, a rear parkade, and 4 residential stories above. The proposed bylaw is zoning text amendment T13, increase height C2 general commercial, bylaw number 4958. The proposed text amendments would apply to all properties designated C2 general commercial. The Director of Development Services provided background information and summarized his March 5th report. There was no correspondence or late correspondence or input from the public regarding the bylaw. The proponents were in attendance and were able to respond to questions from council, and the hearing was terminated at 5:52 p.m.
Thank you, City Clerk. Councillor Minions, do you want to move receipt of that?
That the verbal report of public hearing held March 12, 2018 regarding bylaw number 4958 be received.
Is there a seconder?
Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And Councillor Minions?
That zoning text amendment number T13, 3747 10th Avenue, Raymond DeBuild Architecture, bylaw number 4958 be read a third time.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
That zoning text amendment number T13, 3747 10th Avenue, Raymond DeBuild Architecture, bylaw number 4958 be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and numbered 4958.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Okay, Council Procedures Bylaw, Amendment Number 4. Report dated March 1st from the City Clerk providing an amendment to Council's regular meeting schedule for 2018 and Council's Procedures Bylaw due to changes in upcoming municipal election dates. It's just looking out for us off into the future. And Councillor Alemany, do you want to move these motions, please?
That the report from the city clerk dated March 1st, 2018 be received.
Is there a
I'll
seconder?
second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried.
That the 2018 annual regular meeting schedule be adopted as amended.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
That council procedures bylaw 2013, amendment number 4, bylaw number 4961 be now introduced and read a first time.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Carried.
That council procedures bylaw 2013, amendment number 4, bylaw number 4961 be read a second time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
And that council procedures bylaw 2013, amendment number 4, bylaw number 4961 be read a third time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. And now we're looking at the Community Heritage Commission bylaw. number 4959. Councillor Paulson?
I move that the Community Heritage Commission bylaw 2018, bylaw number 4959, be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with a corporate seal, and numbered 4959.
There's a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. There is no correspondence for action, but there is one proclamation. And Councillor Washington, do you want to make that proclamation on Human Values Day?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the letter received February 23, 2018, requesting that Council proclaim April 24, 2018 as Human Values Day in Port Alberni.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And then, Council, we have some informational correspondence. City Clerk, you want to go through these for us?
Thank you,
quickly,
Mr.
please?
Mayor. So Alberni Valley Community Stakeholders Initiative to End Homelessness, minutes of the February 23rd, 2018 meeting. Karina Conroy, Minister of Child and Family Development, and Katrina Chen, Minister of State of Child Care, email dated February 27th, 2018, sharing information regarding the path to universal child care. For more information with a link. Cannabis sales revenue sharing, letter from the following, requesting support from the province by agreeing to 50% of the provincial share of cannabis tax sharing formula be provided to local governments coming from the village of Valemont, town of Ladysmith, and Harrison Hot Springs. Number 4, Alberni Valley Museum and Heritage Commission, minutes of the January 3rd, 2018 meeting. And Food Security and Climate Disruption Committee, minutes of the February 1st, 2018 meeting.
Thank you. And I'm wondering, Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of these?
Move that informational correspondence items numbered 1 through 5 be filed and received.
Is there a seconder?
Receipt of.
Is there anything that Council wishes to pull out of any of these? Then all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. There is no report from in camera, which brings us to Council reports. And the first one is mine. Council, for your information, February 27th, we had a City Port Authority Joint Committee meeting that I chair. On the 28th, I attended on behalf of Council the chamber dinner at the Italian La Bruschetta, and there was the primary presentation there was a presentation from the proponents of the Steelhead project on LNG. March 1st, I was in Victoria at the Coast Fibre Advisory meeting. Long day, but we're making some progress in getting ready for the presenting the report to Minister Donaldson on the 31st of this month in terms of how the particularly pulp mills can access more fiber and have a better stream of fiber coming their way. And March the 2nd and 3rd, March the 2nd, I was at the provincial wrestling championships that were held here recently, and made the opening comments on the first day, and then presented some of the medals at the end. There's a major presentation there for Tom McAvey, who's been involved with wrestling almost since its inception in Port Alberni. Over 35 years, almost 40 years. And during that time, just a few statistics. We've had 368 BC placers, people who have been champions in the province. 76 were BC high school champions. There were over 100 wrestlers have medaled at the national championships. 42 of those were crowned as national champions. Alberni wrestlers have gone on to post-secondary and international success, and of course, even the Olympics. Under Tom McAvey's leadership, Alberni District Secondary School has won 40 island championships and 12 provincial titles, now 15 titles, because at the end of that wrestling tournament, the provincial tournament, for the first time in BC history, a BC secondary school has won all three, the tournament, the boys, the girls. They've won it twice. ADSS is the only school in the province that has won all three of those for the second time. So it's a tremendous achievement, and it's a testament to Tom and the kind of work that he puts into the wrestling and the commitment of his wrestling alumni. And there are hundreds of them. And the interesting thing is that these alumni maintain their connections with each other. And so when these big tournaments come on, man, they're just there to help. They know what to do. It's amazing. So that was a great weekend, and I was really happy to represent council at that event. On the 6th, on the Tuesday, I was at ADSS at a student assembly where the leader of the federal NDP, Jagmeet Singh, was speaking, and then followed that up with going to the Sikh temple on 5th Avenue, where he was presenting to that congregation there. And then, of course, that afternoon, we had a tour of the improvements at Gyro Center and Rec Park. So there's been some amazing progress made. A bit more to come now, just the final details just being finished up over the next little while, but you'll be proud of it. The Gyro improvements and Rec Park improvements are amazing. On the 8th, was at a public meeting at the Italian Hall about uptown crime and the progress related to that, and then followed that up with an event at Shars with tourism training and various opportunities. On the 9th, I was in Courtenay, iced tea meeting, and then, of course, on the 11th, I was in Colwood representing us and seeing what would happen with our Bulldogs versus the Grizzlies for Game 7, and of course, we can see we weren't quite successful. So, but nonetheless, it was a good year, good season, and we're proud of them. So, Council, that's my report. I move acceptance of that report.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. And in Council, that brings us to the Regional District report, and I'll turn this over to Councillor Paulson.
Not a lot to come back from the Regional District meeting, but Deanna Baudouin was there doing the overview for McLean Mill. The Alberni Clackwood Health Network was there giving their annual report. And the other quite interesting one, there's a development controversy? Development notice called Dockside Resort at Sproat Lake, and there was presentation by the developer there, and you know, I'm sure there will be a decision coming forward on that probably within the next meeting or two. But the rest of it was kind of outside of our valley and always interesting. That's my report, and you can add to.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
You just need to move acceptance.
I would move acceptance of the Regional District.
And I'll second it. All in favor? Carried. And then that brings us to councillors' reports. We'll start with Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. March the 3rd, I attended the Trinity Church Next Steps potluck dinner. Next Steps is a community of residents up and around the Southport area. There's about 15 neighbors attended. All positive. There wasn't a negative person in the group. All positive on what they can do and what the church can do to upgrade the Southport area and up in the uptown area. So it was a good meeting, and he came away feeling a lot positive, and she promised to invite me again in May when they have their next meeting. March 7th, Heritage Commission meeting. Had a presentation by Karen Freely of Parks, Recreation and Heritage concerning possible Heritage Commission involvement with the Our Town program, summer camps and other programming. Also, Director Thorpe was present to facilitate a discussion on the proposed Alberni Valley Museum quad parte agreement. Jamie Morton reported that we will be receiving a $55,000 grant from the BC Arts Council. So thanks, Jamie, for all your hard work in grant writing, creative grant writing. A reminder that the Heritage Fair is coming up May 4th and 5th. March the 8th, he attended a town hall meeting with Councillor Silva and the mayor. About 35 people came and went. Feedback will be presented at our next committee of the whole meeting in April. And March 11th, stopped in and saw the Home Expo at Glenwood. And just a reminder, this Sunday, next Sunday, March 18th, the Film Fest carries on with the movie The Leisure Seekers. It features Canadian acting legend Donald Sutherland. And just a bit more on history. On this date in 1968, the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department reported the smallest fire department was growing, converting a 1956 Mercury truck into a tanker to add to its Jeep Mabel. And the CBC quiz show Reach for the Top was presenting Alberni versus the Esquimalt High Schools. And that's my report, sir.
And what year was that?
1968.
It was a good year. You might even recognize one of the people in there. Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not too much to report. We've had a Food Security Climate Disruption Committee meeting on the 1st, where we went over the recommendations that you saw today. Other than that, got to enjoy the Game 3 of the Bulldogs when they were there. Probably one of the best games I've seen ever. There was lots of crazy stuff going on in that game. Overtime, people getting kicked out. It was a good time. So very disappointed that they weren't able to pull it out, but that's okay. They did a great job. And the only other thing I want to mention is it was great to see the announcement from the gas tax fund about composting in the ACRD, and that was actually a topic of discussion in the Food Security Climate Disruption Committee as well, just around composting and a little bit of the cart before the horse, which happened with garbage trucks and that kind of thing. But it's great to see the province step up with that, and the gas tax, or the feds step up with that. So that was great to see. So hopefully we'll see composting soon.
Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I want to highlight is through the Reconciliation Committee, we had a meeting a few days ago, and we are working on plans to finalize, or working on finalizing plans for our reconciliation workshop we're putting on. We have a few city staff members working very hard since we've done it on reasonably short notice, so we thank them for that. The event is going to be Tuesday, March 27th from 6:30 to 9:30 at the Barclay. It's open to the public. The more people, the better. We are going to be doing public input in a few different ways, as well as having some speakers. So whoever is interested in coming out, please do. And that's all. That's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
I apologize. I was a little distracted through a best-of-7 hockey series recently, and being the president of the Bulldogs, I'm fairly involved in that. But I attended the Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society meeting, and I'm happy to see the lease go through tonight, even though it is a very good deal for $1 for 20 years. I also was on the tour at Gyro and Rec Park, and the walk through Rec Park was kind of a walk through memory lane. We have spent many ill youth spent at that park and playing ball, and it's great to see it come back to life. And the last thing I just want to remind everybody about, this Wednesday, March the 14th at 8 o'clock at Echo Centre, there is another coordinating meeting for the Canada Day celebrations. And please, please, anybody who has a minute, an hour, or whatever to give to volunteerism on this event, please attend the meeting or make your thoughts known. I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to pull it off, but they still need people. So that's 8 o'clock Wednesday, Echo Centre. And they need all the help they can get. And that's my report.
Thank you. And Councillor Sobey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6th of March, to tour of the Gyro Park. Enjoyed it very much, and was happy to have yourself, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Paulson to teach me all the history about the park, even if I wasn't born at the time. On the 7th of March, I participated in a webinar in Kelowna held by Health Canada and BC Health Services. The subject matter at the time was extreme heat planning and how our community and our local island health and health services, there was a lot of discussion on how to better improve in the early warning system through health ministries and other stakeholders, including the city of Port Alberni. There was a lot of discussion, and I've learned a lot from other cities. When the temperatures or guideline here for the Alberni Valley is anytime we reach a 29 Celsius temperature for an amount of 3 days consecutive, will alert a warning to health. Most vulnerable, of course, are people 65 years and older. In our community, we have approximately, I learned, 40% of them are actually living alone. So it's quite a concern for our community and the health impact. What I learned from other communities that they actually had cooling stations and so forth, and watering stations. Now, should we panic and get into this? It was mentioned that Port Alberni is often known as the hottest place in Canada and stated so in the news. But what is to our advantage is, yes, it can be hot, but our evenings and night, temperature drops very low, and that's why sometimes we don't meet those requirements of the health warning, because we cool off at night because of our location or where we are with the coast. So it's a very interesting, it was all afternoon, and I enjoyed it very much and learned a lot, so it was all great. Of course, the 8th of March, the public meeting dealing with crime issues, enjoyed that very much, and thank you for Mr. Olson for putting that together, and for Chris for actually moderating and taking notes and all that, so appreciate that very much. And that's March. I'll keep that. That's it for my report. Thank you.
Good.
I don't want to talk all this.
Do you want to move receipt of council reports?
I'll move receipt of all these wonderful reports, which I would say.
All right.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And is there any new business, council? And this is question period. It's an opportunity for public and press to ask questions of mayor and council. In that case, we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried.